Welcome, welcome once again to the Radical Imagination. I'm your host, Jim Freddos. I'm a sociologist who's taught at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Yeshiva University here in New York City. In the United States, it's rare for third-party and independent candidates to take large shares of the vote in elections. Occasionally, a third party becomes one of the major parties through a presidential election. The last time that occurred was in 1856, when the Republicans supplanted the Whigs. In the 60 presidential elections since 1788, third-party or independent candidates have won at least 5% of the vote 12 times, or about 20% of the time. But in at least 4 presidential elections since 1900, a third-party candidate attracted enough votes to arguably change the outcome of the election in American history. Third-party candidates often see themselves representing larger social movements that need to find a voice and power electorally in a two-party system that fundamentally does not represent their interests. The hope is that given the structural changes occurring in the economy, and through the organizing and mobilizing of mass unrest through nonviolent disruptive strategies, their campaign will impact the electoral system enough to either better reflect the interests legislatively of the disenfranchised they believe they represent, or, in the best of all possible worlds, enable the candidate and their party, in the spirit of a broad united front and coalition strategy, democratically take power. Cornel West's campaign in seeking the Green Party nomination for president incorporates this vision. It's shaping up as a campaign like we've never really seen before. Running for president is just a moment for a movement. He's pushing us to think in the long term, break from the corporate-dominated two-party system, speak to the needs of poor and working people, do it with radical love, with style, and smile. We're blessed and honored to have Jill Stein once again on the Radical Imagination today as our guest. Jill is an American physician, activist, and was the Green Party's nominee for president in 2012 and 2016, and the party's candidate for governor of Massachusetts in 2002 and 2010. She's also a senior consultant with Cornel's campaign. Among many other issues, we want to get her thoughts about his campaign, how it fits with the Green Party vision and platform, and how a third-party movement might finally win and take power for the survival of the earth, for the interests and needs not only of working and poor people, but for those who are the common sense majority of all humankind. So welcome, Jill, so very much to the show. It's just a blessing and an honor, and I'm so glad you're here to help us and our audience understand more about Cornel's campaign and how it fits into the Green Party. So maybe we should start by helping our audience understand what the Green Party is, a little bit of its history, background, what it stands for, and so on.
Great, wonderful. It's really great to be with you, Jim, and thank you for all your honest and inspirational reporting, commentary, investigation. This is what real media looks like, and it's really an honor to be here with you. And I just want to underscore, I'm speaking as me, a former presidential candidate, with the perspective that brings. And as much as I am supporting the Cornel West campaign, I'm not speaking for it. So just to be clear,
yes.
You know, who I'm talking for. And, you know, as a, what can I say, a lifelong activist and really a mother on fire, which is, you know, essentially what I'm about. You know, and I'm also a person who was led then to fight within the system after having advocated as a mother, a physician, an activist, and seeing that advocacy just kind of go down the tubes, because as it's been demonstrated, really forever, but very effectively by recent studies, it's money. It's money that buys you policy. It's not everyday people. It's not the moral high ground. It's not practical solutions to critical crises that we're facing. And I had undergone my evolution as a mother physician, very concerned, especially about health, public health epidemics of chronic disease, of learning and developmental disabilities, and asthma and cancers. I had been very active with other organizations and groups, and discovered that really doesn't get you anywhere. They'll lead you around the nose, pretending that there's a bill that they're going to pass, and then after 5 years of fighting for it, they'll change a word, and then suddenly it's useless. So I became a candidate. Basically, I was really fooled. I was tricked into running for office, having no idea what that involves, because you never do know until you do it. And that was in the year 2000 when I ran for governor for the first time, and really became a party person for the first time, reluctantly, kicking and screaming, because, political parties, I'm not a party animal. I think most people are not. But I really came to see that the counterweight to big money and the corruption, the systematic, pervasive, sellout of our political system and our regulatory boards and everything, the counterweight to that is people and people power. And you can't get to people power one person at a time. You need a strategy, you need a plan, you need a coalition. And coalitions take a lot of work. That work is called a political party. I mean, I finally understood at the, tender young age of 50, I became a party activist for the first time, because all of a sudden I really understood, that our honest citizen advocacy had gone nowhere, that we really needed coalitions that stay together and work together. And, in a nutshell, that's what the Green Party is. It is what a political party is supposed to be. It's supposed to be run of, by, and for the people. But, most political parties, in fact, certainly the duopoly, and then many other parties that pretend to be parties but really aren't, like No Labels, this very centrist organization that appeared out of nowhere, and they're looking for a candidate, and they're supposedly going to find the middle, the centrist corporate middle between two corporate political parties. I don't regard that. That is not a real political party either, and it's not an alternative political party either. Most of what pretends to be political parties is just front groups for deep pockets, and they're totally sold out. So the Green Party does not take corporate money. We don't conscience super PACs, dark money, all the tricks and kind of end runs around campaign finance that are standard operating procedure for the duopoly and the big parties. We don't do any of that. We operate by the simple and basic rules that you don't need expensive lawyers for. We're of, by, and for the people, and we are not a money-driven or corporate-driven party, and quite to the contrary. We oppose those institutions that crush real democracy. We're about real democracy, and our basic tenets are social justice, environmental sustainability, democracy, and nonviolence. That's who we are, and what you see is what you get, because we're not paid and we don't have the budget to put on a big show. We are a party that's of, by, and for the people, for people, planet, and peace over profit, in a nutshell.
Right. I know we were going to get to this on the show, but let's do this now, because you're talking so much about the issue of money and the need to have so much and so on to carry on a successful campaign. The Federal Election Commission has pushed back on you in particular. Would you care, please tell our audience what's been happening there, the situation there, and how this is part of a larger effort to squelch dissent, those who do challenge the system?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the chance to talk about this. I have been in a fight with the Federal Election Commission since 2020. So it's been about 3 years. And the same, when the campaign ended, and I was being smeared as a third party candidate, because that's part of how they try to, prevent competition. And by that, I mean, sort of the major parties, the big players and the corporate interests behind them, they smear challengers. And coming out of the 2016 campaign, Russiagate was all the rage, and I was supposed to be the Putin puppet that was there to mess up the election. And let me just say here that I was investigated for 3 years following the election due to this kind of political, or I should say politically motivated smear campaign. It worked its way up to the Senate Intelligence Committee, where I was subject to investigation for 3 years, which involved examining all of my basically communications and events and conversations and phone calls and everything for the duration of the campaign. And before that too, I was being investigated as a Putin, puppet.
And then they found out that you're not a puppet, right?
Well, absolutely. After 3 years, they published 5 volumes. I was in the 5th volume, where they basically said, "There's nothing here. Thank you for your cooperation." So it was a complete exoneration, but of course the media missed that. All they got were all the accusations. So the fact that I've been completely cleared after thoroughly being investigated, is kind of left out of the conversation. So that smear is somewhat ongoing. But to the current question about what does that have to do with the Federal Election Commission now? Well, the day that investigation ended, the day that they finally published their big, exoneration, that week, I then was contacted by the Federal Election Commission saying that basically that they wanted me to pay $175,000 because, oops, they gave me public money, which I had qualified for, which the campaign had qualified for. This was public matching funds to spend to get on the ballot. And now they were trying to claw it back 5 years after the fact. 5 years after the fact, the decision worked its way through the process. Part of the time they were shut down because the FEC is kind of in a shambles, and it lost quorum for like a year and a half. So everything was kind of up in the air. Our campaign had basically disbanded and was shut down. And then I was given notice that, oh, by the way, you owe us $175,000. And let me just say that I won't go into the legal weeds here, but the bottom line is that the FEC is a bipartisan institution. It's run of, by, and for the 2 major parties. It's governed by a commission of 6 people, which is usually evenly divided between the 2. And they get into fights with each other, but what they can agree on is silencing the small fry in the competition. So the FEC turns a blind eye to super PACs, to dark money, to where the real corruption has a stranglehold on our political system. They don't worry about that. Somehow they never quite got their regulations together to deal with the big stuff. So they focus on the small fry, and they make a lot of decisions among their 6 bipartisan players. So you can see who gets caught in the target hairs here. It's the little parties, it's the little guys, and that's what's going on now. There is a rule, an obscure rule. The FEC has gazillion obscure rules that you never know about until you've trespassed on them. And there's literally no way to find out during the course of a campaign or even afterwards whether what you're doing is legitimate without having a lawyer that then goes to the FEC that files a specific question. Then you have to wait months in order to get your legal answer and so on. So it's a very kind of cockamamie organization, which is really not defending our interests. And there's a wonderful watchdog group now, which is actually composed of former FEC attorneys and even a commissioner or two who are trying to reform the FEC. And I'll just say very simply, the FEC should be a non-partisan organization, not a bipartisan organization, especially in this era where most people do not identify with either the major political parties. A vast majority, almost 2/3, are clamoring for other political options. And when you ask people, are you a Democrat or a Republican? About half of people say, I identify as an independent. I'm not either of these. That is twice the number that identify as either Democrats, 25%, or Republicans, about 25%. So this is an era when, the old institutions are really obsolete. They are zombie institutions that are not addressing our needs and the crises that we are facing in our everyday life. We need a political system that really reflects democracy and real competition. We need to get the big money out and get the people back in to our political system. And that has everything to do with how the FEC functions. And there are a lot of other things that need to be done as well. There's not just one silver bullet here, but that needs to be a part of the democracy agenda.
Well put. So again, you become a diversion in a sense, a vehicle through which powers that be can express and show that this is what can happen to you if you dare to dissent from the system, and you're being put through the ringer in a sense, right? To further keep other people from daring to challenge that system. And it's like, again, as we see the empire and all our institutions of political duopoly crumble before our eyes, as you so rightly pointed out, so many people are so fed up with it. This is sort of a desperate way of, again, clinging on to power, making you a scapegoat, and all kinds of ways of trying to defame and so on.
And Jim, can I just throw in that
Sure.
I don't claim to know what the motive is here, but I can say that the rules are set up in such a way that there's enormous ambiguity within the FEC's own rules. And that ambiguity, at the end of the day, is interpreted by their bipartisan commission. So the fact that you have too many rules for anybody to follow, even the attorneys, even FEC attorneys who do nothing but try to follow and understand FEC law. There's enormous confusion and ambiguity about particular policies. And the fact that that ambiguity at the end of the day falls into the lap of 6 commissioners who are Democrats and Republicans only, and who are generally politically distinguished people. So they have skin in the political game. And often these are political appointments, not always, but usually. And so that just disadvantages independents and small parties, which is where the American electorate is really begging to go now. We want a much more open, diverse, and inclusive political dialogue and set of choices and candidates on the ballot. So I don't in my own mind conclude that the FEC is personally and purposefully coming after myself. But what I do know is that the system lends itself to all kinds of political interpretations that do not serve democracy and the American public.
Yeah, that's a profoundly important, nuanced way of putting it. Absolutely. Of course, one way of creating also the inability for structural and important change that we need is to make the bureaucracy so ambiguous and so difficult to deal with. And so I went to an event with ethical culture, and Stephen Dazinger, who you probably know, is being personally sued by Chevron and so on. There's all kinds of forces by the economic and political powers that be who are, again, trying to stifle dissent in a variety of ways. So how can we help you? How can the people help you in
Well,
this?
thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think we help ourselves by broadening our democracy agenda. So, there are a number of things on our democracy agenda. We need ranked choice voting. We need to get past this first past the post system that lends itself to the spoiler myth, I must say, and smear, which suppresses third parties. We need more open access to the ballot, because that got shut down when the socialists were a strong force in the 1900s. Then suddenly all the rules of accessing the ballot became much more difficult, and they basically preserve the power of the status quo. But if you're a new party or a small party, it's unbelievably expensive and ridiculous, and you have to get up to, I think it's like in New York State now, you have to get something like you have to collect 45,000 valid signatures, which means, because of just little errors that happen in that process, you got to collect about twice as many. So it's about, 80,000, 90,000 signatures that will have to be collected in New York State just to get on the ballot in the period of 6 weeks. I mean, it's absolutely insane. This is why the so-called no labels party, how are they getting on the ballot? Basically buying their way onto the ballot for $70 million. That's what it takes to buy your way onto the ballot now, because of these outrageous rules that have been created. So the money in politics, is just totally over the top, the money that is needed to compete, which is why we need public funding, and also why we have to basically bar private funding and the private sellout, the wholesale purchase of our election system. This should not be how elections are run. So these are many things that need to be done. The FEC reform, making it a nonpartisan institution for starters, that should be a part of this agenda. For me in this fight, we are about to take our case to the Supreme Court.
Right.
Not that that's going to be a silver bullet, or not that we have great expectations that the Supreme Court is necessarily going to turn this around. But we want to keep fighting this. We want to put this on the agenda of everybody. If you go to the website for my 2016 campaign, we have to keep our campaign open until this is settled, open and paying outrageous amounts of money every month just to keep our filings current with the Federal Election Commission. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the rat race that you get tied up in. But if you would like to lend a hand in one way or another, we are at jillstein.net, and you can sign up to follow what's happening. We've just now filed for the Supreme Court to have a hearing on this. And over the course of our fight, I'm really gratified that what really started off as a very obscure battle that nobody could understand, we have finally been able to put this in its proper context and framework, and really tie this to what happens to small parties over and over again, and small candidates. This also happened, though for a different reason, but the libertarians were also caught in this fight recently, and they were required to return all the public money that they were given. It wasn't 5 or 6 years after the fact, like in our case, but it's still extremely oppressive. And small parties are the only ones who use this now, because the others have been totally sold out. They're corporate funded all the way. We need a fully funded clean elections, clean money system of public funding. That's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
FEC reform should be part of this. Go to jillstein.net and just become a part of this push for democracy.
Absolutely. And again, as you've put forward here, this is not just something that protects the rights of the smaller independent parties. This is a fight to save literally our democracy, on what's left of it. And if we can, just for a few minutes, reflect a little bit about, again, Cornel West's attempt to gain the nomination for the Green Party. In my opening, I said, this is like, it's it's turning out to be a campaign like we've never seen before. Now, did you think I overstated that? And how would you like to comment on that?
When I heard that Cornel was running,
Yeah.
I heard on a Monday. On Wednesday, he did an interview with Democracy Now! That made very clear that he was not properly supported in a party that had never done ballot access. They might have it in 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 states, but that's not like, conducting basically 30 ballot access campaigns at once all over the country. I mean, it's really quite overwhelming. And there were other controversies that he had not anticipated. Anyhow, this like Monday heard about it. Wednesday saw they were in trouble. On Thursday, I called Green Party colleagues all over the country because I didn't just want to make a move on my own, sensibilities. I wanted to just check and, get the temperature of the party. And the temperature was like boiling over. Yes, encourage Cornel to contend for our nomination. And Ajamu Baraka, my running mate in 2016, was a part of this discussion. And he and I, felt exactly the same. And we basically then talked to Chris Hedges on Friday. And on Saturday, we had a sit down by Zoom, with Chris and Cornel and his wife, Dr. Anahita West, and his brother, and a few other, close consultants. And the decision was made, that this was an incredibly historic moment, like a historic moment and a historic candidate for that moment. And this was just too good to pass up. And a whole bunch of us, in fact, the whole team who had been working with me on the FEC fight, we all dropped everything that we were doing in order to help Cornel's campaign make a quick transition into the Green Party, which involves a lot of, fancy footwork with the FEC to get everything properly moved over and all that. And we had messed with the FEC enough that we knew how the system worked, so we could be very helpful on that. But there were like 4 or 5 of us that dropped everything in order to provide core interim campaign staff to make this movement. And that's why we did it. None of us planned to like throw our summers into an incredible team effort that we hadn't anticipated. I mean, we had obligations and family commitments and professional commitments and everything got put on hold because this is a really magical moment. And I'll just say, we're in kind of an historic moment of converging crisis, whatever you look at, crushing inequality, climate collapse, expanding war, verging on nuclear, and this assault on our democracy, which is not just the Republicans. The Democrats are equally culpable of devastating our democracy. Not only look at what's happening to Stephen Donziger and this really kind of trashing of the rule of law for political purposes, or Julian Assange for that matter, and the assault on the First Amendment, which again is bipartisan, and Joe Biden has certainly, continued in Trump's footsteps. The explosion of money. I mean, and look at Cop City and the charging of 60 some peaceful protesters with RICO charges and as eco-terrorists and threatened with decades in jail. I mean, this is what fascism looks like, and this is terrifying. We have an all-out emergency. Pick your dimension of life, whatever it is. We just heard last week that poverty rates have doubled in the past year among children. That housing costs are totally through the roof. 40% of renters now are seriously financially stressed, just trying to keep a roof over their head, let alone, trying to buy a home. It doesn't happen these days unless you're kind of in a very privileged class. Healthcare, the numbers are skyrocketing, premature deaths, infant mortality, maternal mortality, cancer rates, cardiovascular is on the rise again, just other developed countries continue to make progress. We are now leading the pack among developed countries in, in the devastation of our health. We've been totally corporatized. We've been completely sold out, and our political system has everything to do with fixing this. And these solutions are here. And linking back to your first question about what is the Green Party has the integrity and the ability to be able to put real solutions on the table. Whether you look at Medicare for All, which was first advanced by Ralph Nader in his 2000 presidential campaign. He was the first person to actually put single-payer healthcare, its prior name, on the national agenda, or to look at the right to free public higher education, which we put on the national agenda starting in 2012 and then more so in 2016, abolishing student debt, reparations, you name it. The Green New Deal, we've got the solutions, or shall we say, the public has the solutions, but the Green Party actually dares to put these solutions forward. That's what the Green Party is. That's what Cornel West will continue to do. And he has his own very compelling take on these solutions as someone who's been a part of the struggle of, by, and for the people in the streets, in the jailhouses, in our spiritual institutions. Cornel talks to everyone, with everyone. He's just a wonderful person to be leading this battle at a time that the imperative for political transformation has never been greater, and the actual solutions that are at hand are more powerful and compelling than ever. So I really encourage people to go to Cornel West 2024 or actually it's Cornel West 24 .org or .com. Either one will get you there, and sign up and join the team.
Absolutely. Well, I've also, as you know, joined the team many years ago. Cornel was on the very first Radical Imagination with Stanley Aronowitz. He's been on a number of other times and done other things. He was at my wedding. We were in jail together, but also he will be here doing a show on Manhattan Neighborhood Network October 18th, and we're going to talk more about that as it develops. And so he will be here, and we will have a live audience, and we'll get that out to our audience as we move forward here. So here we are now. Let me ask you again, and I know that you get this all the time. You're perhaps reaching out to 80 million people who are in the situations that you're talking about, perhaps tens of millions more. Mm-hmm. So there is the audience out there that haven't been taken into account. You want to reach them. You're going to try to reach them. And I agree with you. Cornel is one of the best to possibly do that. And again, you know what you're going to get hit by is the idea that this is still a spoiler candidacy, and we can't really take it seriously because, again, the 800-pound gorilla in the room is you know who. And if we don't, support the lesser of two evils, we've got you know who. How do you answer that?
I think it's really important for voters to vote on behalf of their interests. I'd say it's really important to reject the propaganda, the voter shaming, the apologists, and the attack dogs from power. When they talk about spoiling, it's, what do they mean? It's their stranglehold on power that's being spoiled, because our lives, the lives of ordinary working people, the middle class, those who are struggling, the poor, the marginalized for any reason, communities of color across the board, our lives have already been spoiled. I mean, just to look at any of the numbers that I spoke of earlier, and I won't go through them now, but really across the board, people are in really desperate straits now, if only to acknowledge that some 60% of people now, more than 60% actually, are living paycheck to paycheck. 100 million are swamped with medical debt. 44 million are locked in student debt. 40% of renters can't afford their rent. 500,000 are unhoused on any given night, and those numbers are all on the rise, even as the very wealthy become even more wealthy than ever. And our climate and our physical environment is collapsing. Our access to water and food, actually, to look only at the Colorado River, which is drying up. You won't hear a lot about this until it happens. But the Colorado River is on track to basically go dry, shutting down the California agriculture system. Okay, when that happens, we lose half the fruits and vegetables for the whole country. So we're in dire straits. Or some 5,000-7,000 people, it's not yet been determined, just got washed out to sea in Libya by an absolutely unprecedented storm that caused flooding in the deserts, and absolute catastrophe. This is happening all over the place, and this is more and more the norm. So really consider your own interests here, that we do not have a future. Our school system, debt, whatever you look at, healthcare, it's all going down the tubes right now. And don't let them try to make you forget it. It's really important to vote on behalf of your own interests. And this is happening under Democrats and Republicans. And, the Democrats, who always smear us, will get very focused on one little thing that Joe Biden did. And for that reason, you should forget everything else and forget what's happening to you. Just remember them. Remember power holders. They don't want you to spoil their party. They don't want you to spoil their stranglehold on power. And if you look at what is really spoiling their stranglehold on power, it's they themselves. Just consider what happened in the midterm elections in 2010, after Obama bailed out the banks and threw homeowners out of their homes to the tune of 8 or 9 million of them. What happened? There was no third party to blame this on, but what happened? The Democrats lost 1,000 state rep seats. They lost 64 seats in the House. They lost 14 seats in the Senate, and they lost 13 governors. They got slammed. Why? Because they have abandoned us. They've abandoned everyday working people. They have thrown us under the bus, and they are rightly being rejected on that account. No one is leading the charge more into war and potential nuclear conflagration. Biden has abandoned his promises on climate, and he's now exceeding what Trump did by way of expanding fossil fuels on public lands, which is where the major expansion happens. And he said yes to all these horrible projects which are going forward under him. So you can forget the differences that they claim, and the Inflation Reduction Act we're not going to have time to talk about, but it is a fossil fuel first bill in disguise. So what they claim to fame, they claim they've done great things on pharmaceuticals. Well, through the Inflation Reduction Act, what does that mean? 10 pharmaceuticals out of thousands will have some drug price negotiations 3 years from now. And they're trying to run for re-election on that. This is BS. It's really important for us to stand up and cast a vote on behalf of real change, to vote for ourselves, our families, our communities, our planet, our future, and peace and international accord. All of that is on the table, and we can move all of that forward by supporting the Cornel West campaign.
I agree, absolutely. And it's so important, again, to reiterate what you said over and over again. Who are the real spoilers? It's not some third party candidate here. It's who you've defined, the duopoly. And enough is enough. We've reached the point of literally no return. And the message has to get out there, and we're doing our best here at the Radical Imagination. And tell us a little about the concrete plans that the Green Party has to get on the ballot, get their candidates, including, of course, whoever is the nominee, on the ballot. Tell us a little about that process and how, again, you're going to be going about doing that.
Great. Yes. We are more organized and energized on this than ever before. In my race in 2016, we were on the ballot in 47 states for about 95% of voters. And this time we fully intend to be on the ballot for 100% of voters in 50 states and the District of Columbia. And we currently have ballot status. That is, we will be on the ballot right now in 18 states, but we're on the verge of achieving that ballot status in 2 more, and then there will be several beyond that. We should be up, I would imagine to 25 or so in the next couple of months. And I would urge everyone to be a part of this. If your state already has the ballot access for Greens, if you already voted Green in your state and you know you're secure, like California, for example, has plenty of Greens and their rules allow that to continue. You can help adjacent states. You can help Arizona. You can help Nevada, other states that have very difficult heavy lifts in front of them. And we can help arrange for you to come in, or if you have a friend that you can stay with, we can put you in touch with the ballot campaigns. These ballot campaigns are basically being driven by volunteers. In many states, the state parties are involved as well. So it's a great way to build a movement as well as to ensure that we have a real voice for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal, for free public higher education, that we actually have that person on the ballot, because whoever the Green is, and of course, Cornel is the presumptive candidate for all sorts of reasons, but there are other candidates and nobody has a nomination yet, but whoever it is going to represent the Green agenda. And that is it. We want that agenda on the ballot. Our lives really depend on it, and we need to fight for it. Just in the act of fighting for it, it helps in getting organized with local Green groups, and it brings us together across, across several progressive political parties. We're collaborating with other parties in the ballot access drive as well. So it's a really exciting moment. We badly need a political realignment to happen. People are, are really fleeing the zombie political parties and a zombie political system, which is running its zombie political candidates that are widely reviled in an election where people are voting against who they hate the most instead of for someone that represents, their future and what they want. We need a positive, affirmative choice for the future that we deserve. And by getting on the ballot, you are concretely ensuring that that's going to happen. So again, just go to cornelwest24.org and sign up. You can sign up there on the volunteer page specifically for ballot access, and then we'll be contacting you about ballot drives that badly need your help. And if you can travel, people are doing that too. People are traveling to states where that is permissible, where you don't have to be a state resident to carry petitions, and helping as well. So if you have time on your hands and you have a friend in Arizona, we need you right now in Arizona, where we need to collect a whole lot more signatures. But just to let you know, it's going gangbusters, and we are finding people really excited and very happy to sign our petition papers. People are really hungry for more choices.
Absolutely, absolutely. And no one leader can do it all. I mean, this is a movement. This is democracy. So we all need to jump in there and help out. How can we get him on some sort of stage with these characters and debate? Because, well, let's leave it at that, because we know who will be able to wipe the floor with the others in a debate. But how can he bring his great charisma and message to a larger audience? What are the chances of possibly even being involved in a primary debate at this point?
Yeah.
Realistically.
Yes. So I think it remains to be seen. Let me put it that way.
I understand.
We
shall see, as you would put it. Yeah.
I should add that the campaign has a new campaign manager now. That's Peter Dow, who has come over, I have to say. He was a DNC attack dog, if I can use those terms, and I use those terms liberally. But he was waging battle on behalf of the DNC, but it helped me understand that when I learned that he grew up in the war in Lebanon with blood and gore in front of him and dodging bullets throughout his childhood. And he witnessed war up close and personal, grew up in war, and became, what shall we say? We talk about Trump derangement syndrome. Well, back then it was Bush derangement syndrome, because the connection was made at that time with the wars in the Middle East. Oh, that was George Bush and the Republicans, with plenty of support from the likes of Joe Biden and others, but it was being, pinned on Republicans at that time. And so he kind of grew up with that incredible attachment to Democrats, became, an immigrant in this country, and basically went to work for what he thought was the cause of peace. And took him a while to get over it, but to his credit, he did finally get over it and had a complete 180 in his politics in 2020, when he became a very strong supporter of Howie Hawkins, and has been very helpful to many Green candidates since then, myself included, in dealing with some of the smear attacks that I deal with all the time. And he's been an incredible ally. And the fact that he's now working as a campaign manager, having been at high levels in many Democratic Party national campaigns, presidential campaigns, this is a transfer of knowledge and information that normally doesn't happen. This is absolutely invaluable. Having been a candidate twice, I really know you cannot run a competitive campaign without understanding state-of-the-art skills, techniques, strategies, and resources. You can't learn it on the fly. You have done it. Yeah. So it's an unbelievable gift to all of us to be able to work with Peter Dow right now. And I'm very excited about how the campaign is getting organized.
Great. I would like to be in touch with him. Got a couple of other ideas for events and so on. Would Bernie and AOC follow likewise? There's always hope, as Cornel would say, and there, in a catastrophe, one can always be redeemed. So the idea of redemption, we've got only a couple more minutes, but let's maybe end on a spiritual progressive level here. And it's of course, in the Jewish New Year and the holidays and so on. I know Cornel is actually going to be helping do a service with Rabbi Michael Lerner of Turn Magazine and so on. So what do we say about this revolutionary Christianity and the redemption and that we're talking about at so many different levels, but spiritual? These are moral issues, right? As he puts it. And so in 2 minutes we have left, maybe you can comment on that as well.
Sure. I mean, and I'm commenting from a totally secular perspective.
Same here.
Born into a Jewish family. And actually, I was quite religious until I was, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 or something like that. And I loved the ritual and all that and learned all the songs. And, so I feel like culturally, I have it in my blood. But, I don't know very much about the traditions, I'm sorry to say, about any of really the traditions. But of course, I relate to the general concepts, and kind of the do unto others and, the notions of forgiveness. And, I think we can't say enough about that right now. I think we incredibly need spiritual grounding. And I don't necessarily mean,
religious.
Yes, religious or
absolutely.
Or denominational.
Spiritual.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
And yes. I mean, we need to get our hearts and our souls revived. They're kind of they've become moribund, really, and they're really dragged down, and it's inseparable from the sense of kind of doom and gloom that we're in this zombie political system. We really need to connect on a basic human level with our fellow human beings across borders, across communities, across everywhere, because technology, has brought us to a new age where we really are living in one village, and we need to treat each other as not only neighbors, but really as family. We really are extended family, and that's literally true. We won't go into the evolution of it, but we really are very closely related. And, it's really important that we start operating, we just put to bed this kind of Ayn Rand, toxic self-advancement, and really understand our holistic selves better. And art is really critical in that. And the art that's accompanying this campaign, I have to say, is just absolutely wonderful and inspirational. A shout out to Mr. Fish, by the way, the cartoonist artist who's doing incredible work with Chris Hedges and others. So, I'd say, yes, let's rediscover our community and go forward from here and build it. We need it. And
look at you here. We're running out of time, but I must, as one secular spokesman to another, that was terrific. Moved me, inspired me. And as Cornel said, well, the Democratic Party is perhaps beyond redemption, but hey, miracles are miracles. But thank you so much, Jill. This has been so wonderful to have you here. So informative. Again, last word, how do we reach you and help in your struggles?
Thank you so much. Yes, it's jillstein.net, and, sign up on the list and, connect, because this is not just about a ton of bricks falling on me. It's about impediments to independent politics. And at the end of the day, this is about really reclaiming our democracy. So join the team, and also join the Cornel West team, and hold on to your hat. Whole lot of fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so very, very much again. And thank you all for watching us here on The Radical Imagination. This is Jim Vredos. We'll see you again next week on The Radical Imagination.